As tensions intensifies between Russia and Ukraine, Germany and Kyiv have forged a groundbreaking defense pact to jointly produce long-range weapons, removing previous range restrictions and signaling a dramatic shift in European security dynamics. Chancellor Friedrich Merz pledges full support for Ukraine's self-defense, even against targets inside Russia, while Moscow warns of escalating retaliation. Meanwhile, Trump and Putin trade fiery rhetoric, with fears of a broader conflict mounting. The EU, backed by record public support, moves towards a unified defense policy, yet Zelensky's possible absence from the upcoming NATO summit raises concerns. As Washington weighs new sanctions and peace talks remain fragile, the world questions and watches: is this the path to deterrence or escalation? I'm Ronald Castros. Welcome to Think Tank.
Our world is becoming unhinged.
The Guardian has reported that Germany and Ukraine have solidified the historic defense partnership, with Chancellor Merz announcing joint production of long-range weapons without range restrictions, marking a strategic shift in war. Berlin also pledged an additional €5 billion in military aid, deepening its involvement as Moscow condemns the move as direct participation in the conflict. Meanwhile, Russia claims readiness for renewed peace talks in Istanbul on June the 2nd, presenting a detailed memorandum, while Kyiv remains cautious. At the same time, Ukraine forces reportedly struck key Russian arms facilities, escalating cross-border attacks amid mounting accusations of war crimes by EU and investigators. As NATO hesitates on Kyiv's inclusion and Trump criticizes Putin's delayed tactics, the path to peace grows ever more complex. Germany arms Ukraine with long-range weapons, a historic shift. Russia warns of escalation, Trump threatens sanctions, and Europe stands divided. Is this the path to peace or war?
The war in Ukraine is entering a new phase, one that could redefine Europe's security map. After years of restraint, Germany has agreed to jointly produce long-range weapons with Ukraine without range restrictions. Zelensky's visit to Berlin culminated in a historic memorandum signed by defense ministers, marking a radical shift in German foreign policy. But this bold move hasn't gone unnoticed. Russia condemned the agreement, calling it an act of provocation. Defense Minister Belosov warned that Germany is fueling escalation, while Medvedev ominously hinted at the risk of World War III. Yet, in Washington, Trump responded with fire of his own. Trump accused Putin of madness, threatening unprecedented sanctions if Moscow doesn't back down. But will this rhetoric bring peace or chaos? Meanwhile, Europe finds itself at a crossroads. A record 81% of Europeans now back a unified defense strategy, signaling a seismic shift in public sentiment toward militarization and sovereignty. But not all doors are open to Kyiv. Zelensky warned that excluding Ukraine from the upcoming NATO summit would be a victory for Putin, raising concerns over Western unity. As the world watches, one question remains: is this defense pact a step toward peace or a prelude to a wider war? One thing is certain: the balance of power has changed forever. In war, Every weapon tells a story. This one may write the next chapter.
Providing more analysis about the most recent updates concerning the Russia-Ukraine war, joining us from Kiev, Mr. Ivan Us, advisor at Ukraine National Center, and from New York, Ms. Irina Tuskerman, political researcher. Welcome to Think Tank, and it's a pleasure to have you both with us in today's episode. Mr. Us, with Germany lifting range restrictions on weapons production with Ukraine, how does this reshape Kiev's strategic defense capabilities against deep Russian military targets, sir?
Greetings to you, Rana, and greetings to all Think Tank viewers and all audience, of course. Actually, starting from the Trump talks that U.S. will not present to Ukraine military aid, that yes, we have military aid from his predecessor, but there will be no new package. Ukraine understands that we need to receive the more weapon from Europe, and Europe should try to substitute U.S. And this meeting between President Zelensky and Chancellor of Germany Merz, actually this meeting demonstrated that Germany as a main economy and the European Union try really to not fully but substitute the United States and to give to Ukraine more serious weapons. The main idea that we hear yesterday from that meeting, that they organized a mutual production of rockets between Germany and Ukraine, and it means that there will be no restriction, because it's not a weapon that Ukraine received from Germany. It's a weapon that Germany and Ukraine will produce. And of course, if you're co-producer of some weapon, you should not have some limits. Of course, it described the idea in Europe that this war will not end in Ukraine. In case of even pause in this war, Russia, quite possible, will think about attacking other countries. But unlike Ukraine, other countries, it will be European Union countries. It will be either Estonia or Lithuania.
Sir, do you want to say that Russia is not going to only stand and fight, or a war is going to remain in Ukraine, but it's going to move on to Estonia and other countries you're mentioning now?
Absolutely, Rana. If you remind all Russian
So you're not
parades
optimistic about this war ending? So there's an escalation that's going to take place after what happened of merging between Germany and Ukraine?
Yes, I think that the end of escalation in Ukraine will not be the end of war. So it will be only pause, as it was after the so-called Minsk agreement. You know that in 2015, when Ukraine and Russia concluded Minsk agreement, a lot of people think that, oh, it's the end of war. It's a pause. But as we see, it was not a pause. It was not a pause in that war, or not the end of that war. It was just a period before next war. And this war starts in the 2022. Now Germany understands that for Russia ideology, if we remind all Russian parades on the 9th of May, they never said that they want to conquer Kiev or to conquer Warsaw. They said that they want to conquer Berlin. They, on their cars, there one phrase, on Berlin, meaning that for Russia, the main moment of the Russian might / Soviet Union, it was 1945 moment when Soviet soldiers actually attacked and conquered Berlin. And Russia now wants to repeat it. And Germany understand that for
so
Russia,
do you think, sir, this is the sudden reason why Germany shifted to stand with Ukraine on the same ground in this war?
I think that motivates them. Germany was with Ukraine.
Okay, sir, I'll be back again, but I have to ask first Ms. Tuskerman, welcome to the show. With Moscow branding Germany as a direct belligerent, how likely is a broader East-West confrontation escalating beyond Ukraine from your own perspective?
Thank you so much for asking this question. Well, the bad news and the good news at the same time, that it has already started. Why is it bad news?
What has already started?
Yes, the confrontation between East and West, the broader confrontation beyond Ukraine. Russia has been escalating all over Europe for quite some time. In fact, its earliest cybersecurity war with Estonia goes back to 2012, even before the Crimea invasion, and it has continued assorted cyber attacks and other hybrid warfare all over Europe ever since then. In the past couple of years, it has escalated substantially. Poland has accused Russia of setting infrastructure on fire last year. There were also other incidents in France and other countries. Last year as well, and the recent cyber outage in at the Cannes festival was also blamed on Moscow, as has been the arson of Keir Starmer's UK Prime Minister's property. So that confrontation is not new; it's ongoing, and it's only likely to escalate in the future if Russia is not stopped. It's anticipated response to these measures is likely to continue to be multidimensional and assertive. The Kremlin's leadership views any support for Ukraine, whether from Germany or from anybody else, as a
You
direct
said the
threat to
Kremlin will use any support from Ukraine?
the Kremlin is opposed to any support to Ukraine from anybody. It's not just Germany. That is why it has recently
Why is it
been
opposing, Mr. Tuskerman? Why is it opposing?
because it perceives any assistance to Ukraine as a direct threat to its strategic interests. It has strategic interest in acquiring and controlling territory in Ukraine because of not only nationalist causes but also conventional geopolitical control of natural resources, and also because Ukraine is a convenient launching pad for attacks on other nearby NATO countries such as Romania. Russia views control of Ukraine as essential, not only in terms of supporting its broader narratives, but also as a logistical matter of reaching Europe and having a place to base its military in case of broader escalations in the future. It's planning ahead, and of course, anything that can help dislodge Russian military from Ukraine, any form of assistance is a threat and an obstacle and a challenge in that regard. So for now, Moscow is likely to ratchet up military pressure on Ukraine, specifically by attacking civilian infrastructure. Russia is running out of advanced weapons, advanced equipment such as tanks, and it has to rely on increasingly less sophisticated museum type equipment to make advances, but it still continues with airstrikes and human wave attacks that result in human and infrastructural losses in Ukraine, but it will also escalate its asymmetrical warfare and terrorism across Western countries in order to create confusion, disruption, to infiltrate local diasporas, and to cause psychological breakdown among European countries.
Mr. Ross, what's your take on what Ms. Tuskerman just said? Do you want to answer?
I absolutely agree with Ms. Tuskerman that really Russia has constant war with West, even before Crimea in 2014, because ideologically Russia always was a country that lived, let's call it so, with the idea that they should win the war versus West. In 1991, the defeat of USSR, actually, as for me, defeat of USSR in the Third World War, because now former Russian President Medvedev make a threat.
Do you believe in what she said now, Mr. Ast? Are you okay with what she said?
Absolutely, I think yes, because for Russia, the idea of war with West, it's constant idea. You know that President Putin said that the biggest geopolitical tragedy of the previous century is the split of USSR, because he want to rebuild USSR, but he want to rebuild it not as a country, but as a system that was always oriented on the war with West. And that ideology lived in Russia. That's why, actually, as for a country oriented on this conflict, and President Putin actually presented his idea in the Munich Security Forum in 2007, year before start of war in Georgia, 2-week war when Russia make attempt to conquer the Georgian capital Tbilisi, but they failed because U.S. President George Bush Jr. at that time he sent his troops, and Russia understands that it will be direct conflict with the United States. Russia understands that they will be defeated in this conflict, actually. That's why he
Ms.
decided.
Tuskerman, considering Putin's 5 conditions for peace, including halting NATO expansion, how viable are these current geopolitical realities?
Going to work. I think anybody who is not currently occupied is looking to join NATO as soon as possible, precisely because of Russia's actions in invading any country that is seen as weak and vulnerable. NATO is a defense alliance. It is not an actual threat to Russia. It never had an offensive mandate, and it has never shown any signs of looking to invade Russia. In fact, Russia brought any violence on its territory on itself by invading and attacking Ukraine. But you will see that Ukraine is the only country that is directly engaged in kinetic action against Russia in any offensive operations. Everyone else just and barely responds to cyber attacks and so forth. But there hasn't been any kinetic confrontation. It's actually been Russia that's been testing sovereign boundaries of countries, such as by sending in drones and other weapons that has violated the space of countries like Poland in the past. And NATO at the time chose not to show restraint and not to respond to these acts of aggression. But Russia has been doing much more than that. It has also been engaged in a shadow intelligence war, threatening the lives of British and French intelligence officers, ordering assassination campaigns inside France, which were intercepted and leaked by the local
So, are you
intelligence
optimistic
services.
about ceasefire, or you're not optimistic, and you see that there's not going to be there's going to be escalation at this point?
The escalation is much more likely than not.
Okay.
Russia is not feeling
I'll
the
be back to you
pressure.
again, Mr. Us. How will Ukraine's potential exclusion from the upcoming NATO summit impact its leverage and future security guarantees and negotiations, sir?
Of course, for Ukraine, it will be a negative moment if Ukraine will be excluded from NATO meeting, but we will see. Because, as of now, we have absolutely different signals. On the one hand, that Ukraine will be excluded from the members of the meeting. On the other hand, Ukraine will be invited to it. Next week will be the next Ramstein meeting. It's a group of supporters of Ukraine, mainly from NATO countries, but actually not only from NATO countries. So the big alliance of countries that help to us. And that's why I think the talks will be, but Ukraine always said that for us, European integration as integration to Euro-Atlantic bloc, meaning NATO, it's civilizational choice. Responding to your previous question, that when Russia started the full-scale aggression against Ukraine, 2 countries in Europe, they never want to be in NATO, namely Finland and Sweden, joined the NATO immediately, because they understand that if they are without a NATO umbrella, it will be very dangerous to them that Russia once attack them, because really only NATO gives the guarantee, only those Article number 5. Yes, it's sometimes criticized, Article number 5 by many countries. Nevertheless, the fact that Finland and Sweden decided to be in NATO only after start of full-scale Russia aggression versus Ukraine, I think that is the best demonstration of the meaning of NATO. As for me, it gives a new momentum to NATO history, to NATO development, when everyone in Europe understands that NATO should take place. That if someone thinks that NATO should not exist, really I think that the war of Russia demonstrates that NATO should be, and the threat from Soviet Union, as it was at the beginning of NATO history, and now its threat from Russia exists, and it is a very big threat, and Europe should think how to respond to it. Thank you, Rana.
Mrs. Tuskerman, as Trump warns of World War III and escalates rhetoric, is Washington managing the crisis or inflaming it further from your own perspective?
Washington wanted to put an end to the crisis, it could do so with relative ease by taking common sense measures, such as working with the European allies on a major sanctions package that would deny Russian entities economic relief. So far, that has not happened, and that has fueled the war and has allowed Russia breathing room and a lifeline to continue sending troops and to continue smuggling equipment that prolongs the war. So far, President Trump has been hesitant in doing so. Another measure it could take to facilitate the end of the hostilities is by sending massive amount of the top-notch U.S. arms to Ukraine. Ukraine has shown incredible capability in doing a lot with very limited resources, and I think it has more than earned the trust to defend its way out of this situation with the best weapons possible against the increasingly weakened
Okay, Ms. Zuckerman,
Russian
you still
military.
didn't answer my question. Is Washington managing the crisis or inflaming it further?
I would say that at this point it's inflaming the crisis further by encouraging Putin, by giving Putin any possibility of hope for the future, by bailing him out constantly after constant violations and games surrounding the ceasefire, including Putin's failure to show up at the high-level summit in Istanbul, which he himself had announced. I think Washington is only helping advance the cause of war at this point, and not the other way around. This it has done nothing to prevent escalation by Russia. It has done nothing to message to Putin that further
De-escalation, you
aggression
mean?
will not be tolerated.
You mean the United States did not do anything to prevent de-escalation?
Not
Oh,
only
to
that, but
prevent escalation.
it has actually encouraged escalation. In fact, I'll give you a very clear example. After the disastrous meeting with Zelensky at the White House, when Trump actually froze the military sales and assistance to Ukraine, this is when Russia attacked most aggressively and caused deaths of civilians in Ukraine. This was a direct green light signal to attack. Whenever U.S. minimizes its assistance to Ukraine, that actually creates real escalation. So yes, it was actually an instance of direct assistance to Russia and direct escalation
So you don't
of the
read
war.
that Washington is trying to manage the crisis at this point. Mr. Ross, with Belarus scaling back joint military drills with Russia, does Kiev see a potential shift in regional alliances or reduced northern pressure, sir?
Of course, as we are talking about Belarus, that was the ally of Russia at the first months of war, full-scale war, because Russia attacked Kiev not from Russian territory. Russia attacked it from Belarus territory. And then Ukraine give a clear signal to Belarus. If they will give their territory to Russian soldiers to attack Ukraine, Ukraine will attack Belarus. It was enough to Belarus to say that they withdraw from this war. They will not give to Russia their territory to attack Ukraine from actually territory of Belarus. Now, because as for me, Belarus is rather not threat for Ukraine, but threat to Lithuania. When I mentioned the possibility of Russia attack on Lithuania, Lithuania don't have a border with continental Russia, but Lithuania has border with Kaliningrad region of Russia. And Russia dreamed about corridor to its Kaliningrad region because it's surrounded by two European Union countries, namely Lithuania and Poland. And of course, Belarus is close.
Who are the two Europeans, sir? Again, please.
So I mean that for Russia, one of the main idea is to build corridor to Belarus, and they could do that. Corridor to Kaliningrad, and they could do that only from Belarus. That's why Belarus is so important now for Russia's strategy. And now, of course, I think that Russia, that President Belarus leader Lukashenko, for a long time, actively participated in this war. President Lukashenko always ignored that. And that's, of course, plus. I mean, for Ukraine, it's plus that President Lukashenko don't support Putin request for their soldiers. Probably
Mr.
Belarus.
Us, thank you very much because I have to wrap up now, but I want to ask Mr. Zuckerman before I leave. With the EU moving toward a unified defense policy, in 10 seconds, please, because they're going to kill me here, is Europe finally ready to assume greater security responsibility without US dominance?
That direction by including joint cooperative initiatives in the Black Sea region, discussing a unified European military and intelligence postures, and discuss a European nuclear umbrella, which France finally greenlit. But it's still moving too slow. Much more needs to be done.
Thank you very much. That was Mr. Ivan Ust, advisor at Ukraine National Center, and Ms. Irina Zuckerman, a political researcher. Thank you very much both for your valuable knowledge and your special insights and discussion. In a world on edge, the Russia-Ukraine war reshapes alliances, ignites tensions, and tests the limits of diplomacy. With Europe rearming, Russia escalating, and Washington divided, the path forward remains perilous. One step towards peace could still lead to chaos. That brings us to the end of today's episode of Think Tank, which always unveils the complexities of our changing world. Thank you very much for staying and watching, and stay tuned for more updates. Thank you.